This is the journey of my Porsche 356 trans rebuild from disassembly to driving. Third gear. This is the original numbers matching transaxle for this car. It's an SC Coupe, 1964. And these axle boots have just completely disintegrated, as well as the motor mounts. They came completely delaminated. 741 slash something, we'll have to clean it up. That's the serial number there, 78012. The drain plug doesn't look super bad. It has, you know, there's some stuff on it. I don't think that's supposed to be bent over either. Okay, now we're going for the auto parts kind of engine degreaser stuff. I think I've loosened, you know, most of the big spots, or I think I've kind of got it into this, you know, soupiness. This is the super clean wheel cleaner. The trick is to get it wet with water first, spray this on for 30 seconds, and then rinse it with water again. This looks much better. It's much cleaner than it was. Set up my puller on the back of this cast housing here, or forged housing. That's going to allow this bearing to come off the shaft, and then the whole axle tube will come off. You want to leave the axle in the differential because there's some little fulcrum plates in there, and you don't want those to fall off. So it's important that we're only removing the axle tube. Added a little piece of solid stock in there so it pulls more even. This isn't a super tight fit. I can feel it already pulling it off. This looks like it's got the normal wear on it. This rope here or string is going to prevent, when I tip it over, it's going to prevent this axle from falling out. So first thing I notice is this big snake in here. This is just like some clear RTV. So someone's gooped this up. The gears themselves look pretty good. This is the reverse gear and the selector for reverse. This is the fork for reverse right here. To the teeth or the center line of the tooth. And so this is the backlash right here. I don't know if you can see it on that gauge. So it goes from 45 to 60. And then you divide by 3 on this method because the reverse gear is a lot bigger in diameter than the pinion gear. So you divide by 3 and it gives you 0.0046. These are the correct bolts with the lock washers on there. In general, I don't see any cracks. So if I roll this around, typically it cracks from like this hole right here or right here. magnafluxed or get some dye or penetrating dye and look at it more carefully. This is 1/4 inch by 1.5 inches, and it's welded onto that old disc hub in 3 places, 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, I just don't know why this thing is so tight. There we go. If you look really carefully, there is no pin in there. So when the trans is in reverse, that's when that bearing is running into its intermediate plate and also scraping against the bearing retainer just a little bit. So that's bad. But I guess in order to take this apart, I think I'm going to relieve the pressure off the selector rod. I'm going to take this detent pin out, and this whole thing should just slide right out. I hope it will. That was easy to pull off. It's not a press fit. Oh, so this reverse gear is super loose too. So we'll try to take that spring out. There's measurements to verify the spring pressure and the spring lengths and all that. So we'll be going through that, but I don't want to mix them up all out there. There it is. This bearing here on that other cover feels really nice. This race right here, I've just wiped it clean with a paper towel, and it is worn. It's not smooth and shiny. It has a texture to it. It's almost like it's been sandblasted or something. This is the bearing we need to replace. This is probably the hardest bearing to replace. It's right next to the pinion. So in order to get this bearing off, we are going to have to disassemble the whole intermediate plate. It's a slug, the spring, the ball. And I think this spacer here is not going to come off with hand pressure, so that's probably as far as I can get this off without additional press. There is a shim between these two guys here. So this needle bearing is actually a caged bearing. Check it out. This one's missing one of the rollers. It's just not there. I'm not sure where it could have gone. I can't feel any wear. It's just discolored or slightly different where the bearings have been moving. And look at that. This one's missing a roller as well. I did make a custom tool, pretty simple little donut here. So this keeps the bearing kind of together. And then this piece is just a nice fit that goes right over the top of the cage, right over the top of the cage. And it actually does push on this side of the cylinders. Yeah, one pinion shim. This looks like after it's been ultrasonically cleaned. This are super clean now. Things are spinning really well on that. And this is first gear. This is second gear. This is, I think, third gear here. This is the synchro ring right here. It typically has a coating on it. And then when the coating wears through, it's bare steel. So when you see shiny metal right there, right there at the split, that's bad. The slider ring to me doesn't look too bad. There's good amount of pressure to get that to clip in. This is what keeps it in gear. There, it just popped out of gear. And these fit together nice. So it's a tight fit, so you got to line it up perfect. There's some wear on these guys right here. I'm going to replace the dog teeth on this one. It's the most rounded out of all of them. They don't look horrible, but you know, while I'm doing it, should replace it. My list here is synchros for first, second, third, and then dog teeth for fourth gear. So this one is a little bit narrower. To 76.7 millimeters. And so I'm right in the middle of the spec. And there we go. And then this side also shows that same little wear mark there. Actually, there's two sides to that wear mark. But these are not typically a replaced item. So the new synchro is going to go just like this. .0118. So that's going to be within spec too. And it's on. Just make sure we don't lose any bearings. Yep, that's it. So I'm going to put that this way. I just came from my barbecue. I was heating this up, and these bearings, when I flipped it over, just fell right out. I also need to measure the depth of the counter bore and also the depth of this counter bore so we can preload these bearings. I was watching it and going very slow. I would back off the pressure. I would add more pressure to one shaft. I would push it down 1/16 of an inch. Then I would push together. And then if that didn't work, I would go to the other shaft. Back from the workshop, got everything pushed on and reassembled in the intermediate plate. The only reason that race came out so easily is because I TIG welded along the entire diameter of that race, let it cool down, which shrunk it tremendously. Now I'm installing the new race while the housing is heated up to about 250 degrees. I heated it up in the barbecue. Can't tell in this video, but it is hot and it does help make this go in a little easier. about 907, and the minimum of that spring is 895. Ball, and that is over the spec for the 3.4. Way too long. This pin gauge will go right inside the 3 at a time. So this is, I think, the best way to position that. So you can see now the bolt wants to be tightened right about there. This is directly in the center between both of those dog teeth. My pinion depth tool is inside. It's an old 914 carrier housing, outfitted with a dial indicator. And I have the completely assembled gear stack assembled with the original gasket. And what I'm getting is 59.41. The previous measurement before I took all the bearings and gears off was 59.39. So the difference in bearings makes a small change, but it's a change in the wrong direction. So the target dimension for this pinion gear is 59.35. I'm going to replace that gasket with one that's 3 thousandths thinner. This Loctite doesn't really dry. It's anaerobic, so it's not going to fully harden. It's kind of a softer sealant. So I am very, very close. 59.36. I'm going to include a shim. So that's going to create a 13 thousandths preload on the bearings. That'll make sure they're seated in the housing. Basically what I'm doing here is I'm measuring the height of the housing with the external dial indicator, jumping up and down. So there's, 0. And then I'm getting, 30.5. And then I'm subtracting the width of the actual differential carrier that belongs in this car. That gives me the preload. I'm trying to get it close to about 5 thousandths of an inch, between 5 and 6 thousandths of an inch. Now the nut is directly over this bolt circle. So just with one hand, I'm getting 0.04 to 0.2. So it's a bigger number. That's 0.16. Target's 0.15. So I'm putting a lot of pressure on these axles, and I can make it click and be pretty rough with it. But no matter what I do, I get the same number on the readout every time. Any sort of bow in the shape, especially on the areas that I hammered. So that's not enough clearance because I can't move it like I did before. And that's a wrap on the transmission. Shifting is just buttery smooth, so let me show you. Two fingers. Fourth gear does whine just a little bit. First gear, boom. Second gear. Third gear. Good downshift, no problem. Second gear, no problem.